Last couple of questions, because it is 8 o'clock, and you have one you were going
Yeah, wrote it down too. It's a good one.
I became a single issue voter in December. I suspect you all know what it's about.
Yep.
Tony, you were saying how you should, if you want to work with people, you gotta invite them in.
Absolutely.
Myself, I went to Newtown. I spoke at Newtown Action Alliance meetings. I offered my, I don't want to say expertise, but my opinion. I extended it to one of their co-founders. So, that's great, let's talk. Never heard from them. And same thing kind of happened at the state capitol. I went there on lobby day. I went there on the day the law was voted on, signed on, all that. I want to know when the laws are going to be clarified. They're incredibly vague.
They are.
They are
They're a
going to
mess.
turn people like myself and others in the room possibly into felons. The message, or the language, excuse me, the language rather, is very twisted. It's impossible to read. It's so twisted the state police, who's in charge of enforcing the laws, will not issue written statements saying what is legal or not legal. And as you know, if you become a felon in Connecticut, that means you can't vote. That means you can't own a firearm anywhere in the country anymore. And our rights have been taken away, and it needs to change. And I'm one of 9,000 people in the group in Connecticut. After October 1st, our membership is going to go through the roof. When all the hunters who said, it's not going to affect us.
Yeah, you gotta try and buy ammo.
They're going to try to buy ammo after October 1st and not be able to. And our membership is going to go through the roof. And, we'd like to see some of the things changed. I mean, people can say our rights haven't been infringed upon, but they definitely have been. I can give you countless examples.
How about Colorado?
Colorado
They recalled a couple of guys, right?
Colorado just recalled 2 people. Chicago just turned over a 46-year ruling saying that all guns have to be registered because they know where it's going. California just voted down a proposed law on possession of large capacity magazines. It's unlawful, it's unconstitutional, and in my opinion, which I
Well,
agree with, is
leave that up to the courts. It's going through the court system right now. You've got to let the court system do its
I think it actually
stuff.
is, there is actually 1 or 2 lawsuits have been launched.
Yes,
That-
my
that's
group
kinda-
has
yeah,
lost
you're right. And
Supreme
there's
Court
another-
case.
There's a couple of groups.
There are
Yours
few.
is the big one, right? The one that,
To your point, I can become a felon January 1st. I don't
But
register my guns.
all that matters, if you respect the
I wouldn't do
Constitution. Hold on.
Okay.
If you respect the Constitution of the state of Connecticut and our U.S. Constitution, we have 3 branches of government: the legislature, the executive, and the judicial. Do you agree with that? We've got to make sure that our court system is effectively used.
you don't.
Now, people have said that they want to expedite the process. The paperwork is in there. Let the legal system do its thing. I understand where you're coming from, and I said publicly I would have voted yes for the bill, but I think that the court system needs to work out, and it needs to go through the process. It's ultimately going to come to the Supreme Court.
They both back in because frankly, I agree that there are things in the law that are wrong. I do not think that we should abdicate that to the courts. I think as legislators, we should look at that law next year, and we should clean it up and do whatever we can to fix it.
Absolutely.
We tried to do that this year. I mean, you know how this thing came through. You know a lot of this crap that was in law was bad, and it was political, and we're fine. We tried to fix a lot of that. I think in future years, we'll try to fix it. I do not believe, it's just me, I don't believe that the court should have a whole role. They do it by the nature of the Constitution, but that doesn't mean we should just throw the punt to them. And I guess
Well,
that's
yeah, I
where,
don't think, yeah, well.
so we do have a role in
No,
fixing it.
actually, it's funny, I was dealing with this today, in my day job as a lawyer, I represent a gun club, and they were trying to figure out, it's funny, their gun club is part of the bigger club, and they're having an issue, say, hey, listen, for a certain fee, we lend them a gun, we lend them some ammo, we give them clay pigeons, and are we selling ammo? Do they have to have an eligibility certificate? Do we need to, and so you call up to the guys now in charge of that, what's their, part of the state police, and they don't know, they're trying to figure it out, so, and
And that needs to be clarified.
I suspect
You're
on
absolutely right.
October
We need to
1st, there's gonna be
revisit-
some stuff punted.
Yeah, we really
You're
need
gonna
to
say, you know
revisit.
what, let's hold off until we figure this out.
That's right.
or get,
You know, in the past, with any gun legislation, there were both sides at the table. And I did not vote for anything that wasn't acceptable to lawful gun owners. This was a very unusual year, and I think that, yeah, they overreached, there's no question, and we should revisit that bill.
If I can give you an example, Connecticut, you're required to, if you apply for a pistol permit, the state, or the city or the town is supposed to reply in 8 weeks,
Mhm.
and that's what the statute says. Overwhelmingly, it's far and beyond, 16 weeks, 23 weeks, I've heard people wait 6 months. There's no accountability for the town. There's a board that reviews these cases, there are people that are having appeals. The appeal list is over a year long now. You're
You know why
denied
that
your
is?
authority.
Because they are trying to get guidance from the state, and they aren't giving them.
That's
Yeah.
That's possible.
Yeah.
I just met somebody the other day, he waited 16 weeks. The local police called around until they found his medical doctor and asked the doctor, does this person pose a risk for a pistol permit?
Mhm.
His doctor complied and answered the questions. That's a huge violation of HIPAA. And they're required to give an answer in 8 weeks, they waited 16.
Right.
And, there's no penalty for them doing this, and it's happening all over Connecticut.
yeah, that's been happening long, that happened long
And
before this bill.
it's delaying
Yeah, it was,
people's right to.
because my neighbors were called for, prior to this bill, in fact,
Yes.
neighbors were
Unrelated.
called with regards to somebody doing background checks.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, that timeline is honored in the bridge, everybody knows it. And so it's a function of, well, okay, what do? You create a private right of action, so you can sue the police department, or whoever it is that's doing the checks to get them in the court, or does it become an automatic grant?
John,
Well,
I
you're
would-
never gonna get an automatic grant.
John, I would suggest in the next session, do what they always like to do, and that is if they don't give you an answer in that amount of time under the law, then you're absolved, and you can have it. So in other words, and that's what they do for themselves, because it's interesting, because they won't vote for a wage increase on the state employee unions.
Yeah.
What they do is, they let it hang on the calendar, and if it stays there 30 days without action, it goes into effect. Well, why not do the same here? If you can't give an answer, okay, from the state, and you don't have an answer, then guess what? You get to keep it, and you're absolved from responsibility. And that would be the only way I could see as it being fair.
We actually explored that idea in the Judiciary Committee
Yeah.
subcommittee meeting, and what ended up happening is the municipalities came back and said, whoa, if you do that, then we're gonna have to, that's an unfunded mandate, because then our police department, who's ever doing these
Yeah.
reviews, are gonna have to spend more time, more money, more
Why?
manpower.
Why? No, they're
That's
gonna
good.
say, if they can't get them the answer in the amount of time, and they're not getting the answer from the state to make that decision, then, by the way, then the gun owner gets to have his permit, and he's absolved of any further responsibility with regards to that, because they did their part.
Oh, yeah.
They followed the rules and the law, and the law says within so many weeks, they're supposed to get an answer.
It's funny, it's one of those, be careful what you ask for, because what'll end up happening is someone will change that 18 to 24, to
Yeah.
36.
Yeah.
That's the problem, that's a big problem we're gonna run into, is what he said, just so you know. I hope we can fix some of this stuff, but the problem is when you open the can of worms, people are gonna be afraid to open the can of worms again because of the battle, so they're gonna try just to brush it under the rug. A great example is where, the guy was caught, I guess, trying to get his pizza, that somebody saw he was carrying concealed, and then it went to the Supreme Court, and all of a sudden now everybody figured out, guess what, in Connecticut, you can carry open. It used to be everybody was taught if you carried open, you were gonna be arrested for breach of peace. Well, guess what, that law doesn't exist. And nobody in the legislature wanted to touch it, because it was too controversial. That's my worry for next year, because